Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Bout Hour, the channel dedicated to bringing you fantasy matchups on a regular basis. If there's a particular matchup that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section, and I promise to honor your request. The fight I'll be covering this evening is Big George Foreman versus Iron Mike Tyson. Those of us who were around in the early 90s remember when George Foreman basically called out Mike Tyson. He said that he could beat Mike Tyson. And frankly, I believe that old George Foreman was better than young George Foreman. So we all know how great Mike Tyson was, how phenomenal he was, how feared he was. Mike Tyson was the best seek and destroy boxer in the history of boxing. And one thing Tyson had working in his favor was that intimidation factor. He was in his opponent's heads, and he had them beat before he got into the ring. And the knockouts were just icing on the cake. But where Tyson ran into trouble is when he came across someone he couldn't intimidate. When he came across someone who wasn't afraid of him. And it's no coincidence that Buster Douglas handed him his first loss. Now, we can debate when Mike Tyson knocked Buster Douglas down all day. We can debate the count, how long it was. But at the end of the day, he got the win and he beat Mike Tyson. So, one of my favorite fights in the history of boxing is when George Foreman fought Evander Holyfield. At his age, for his age, he gave Holyfield the fight of his life. He was in tremendous shape, and although he fell short, he just gained my respect that night and won my heart that night. So George Foreman was a true phenomenon in there. Now, as far as who would win a fight between Big George and Iron Mike, honestly, I'd have to give this one to Big George for the reasons that I mentioned. He wouldn't be afraid or intimidated by Tyson. He was bigger than Tyson. He had a jab that could keep Tyson at bay while he's delivering punishment. And George Foreman has one of the greatest chins in the history of boxing. Now, you can hit him 1,000 times and he just walks through it. And we saw how Holyfield hit Foreman, but Holyfield's punches weren't affecting him. They weren't penetrating. And so, Big George Foreman is basically a brick wall on legs, or a brick wall with legs. So, the age wouldn't be a factor. And Iron Mike would definitely have his hands full. And so, I think that most of you would agree that Big George Foreman would take this by knockout. Please give me your thoughts on this one. And thanks for tuning in.